What's up everybody, Matt Maran here, and this week I've been driving the 2022 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. And in this video I want to explore whether or not the 4Runner here in the year 2022 is still worth getting. Even though it's a very ancient vehicle, it still continues to sell very well. And so I kind of want to discuss that and also discuss some of the changes they've made here over the past few years since my last review on a 4Runner that I did a few years back. Mechanically, it's basically the same, but I will go over a few of the little changes here. But so in my week here so far, I've put about 90 miles on it here, and I've really enjoyed my time in the 4Runner. Overall, the 4Runner has this charm to it that I think as the years go by, it continues to get a little more desirable, actually, especially with the type of people that it's going after who really enjoy kind of the more bare bones and just more rugged and less frills experience you get here with the 4Runner. But I'm impressed that they continue to sell as well as they do, considering they aren't cheap these days. Even though this is a pretty dated interior and everything else is pretty dated, this one as tested is $54,000 still. And yet at those price points, 4Runners, they've sold well over 100,000 units just in 2021 alone. So they're still doing a really good job selling these, and I think part of it is the fact they've been keeping it fresh. Over the past few years, some of the improvements are that you can get a unique color every year. This year it's this lime rush color, but also they improved, like for example the headlights now are LEDs, and you also have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto now, thankfully, and you also do have the newer Toyota infotainment software that it's running now instead of the more dated software it used to have. The screen's still small, everything else is still pretty dated in here, but at least the usability things, having the smartphone integration, having the better visibility at night are really key improvements that I think have helped to keep this vehicle modern enough that it has the amenities that the basic amenities that people want, while still retaining the old school charm here of the 4Runner. And it is certainly old school. One thing that really jumped out to me was the fact that this I think might be the only vehicle on the market to still run a 5-speed automatic. I feel like even 20 years ago most companies were upgrading to 6-speed automatics and most stuff. So 5-speed automatic, and it's kind of a fun throwback because in other vehicles these days I judge like how quickly it is to give me a downshift and react to what I want. And in this vehicle, like going up a hill, I press the gas pedal more and more, and then I'm reminded that, oh yeah, there's only 5 gears. This is the optimal gear. There is nothing better. It's just you put your foot into it, the engine labors, and just eventually, slowly but surely gets up to, the kind of speed that you're expecting, or whatever performance you're expecting out of it. And so it's just kind of funny that, there's those types of things. And that is one thing, although they have modernized some aspects here of the 4Runner, I'm really surprised they haven't put in the 6-speed automatic, at least, that the Tacoma gets. The Tacoma does run a slightly different V6. It's a little bit smaller, but it's very similar in power. So honestly, they could have even swapped over that V6 if they needed to in order to incorporate the 6-speed. But, for a vehicle like this, it's old school, and so I'm assuming the buyer of these don't care that it runs a 5-speed automatic and that it gets pretty terrible fuel economy as a result. My fuel economy here, by the way, for my week of driving, which was mostly around town, back roads, 35-mile-per-hour driving, with a little bit of highway mixed in and a little bit of stop and go. But anyway, my average was 14.2 mpg. These are rated at 16 mpg in the city, 19 on the highway, and 17 combined. So, I was hoping to maybe get, about 16 or so, but I'm falling well short of that here with 14. And it's kind of funny because, there's V8 powered stuff or twin turbo V6 stuff that even gets 14 mpg easily, that's similar in weight and all that kind of stuff, even similar in capabilities. And that is one area where it really shows its age, and some of the newer competitors really do have, leg up when it comes to fuel economy, which, I think as these days, with gas getting more and more expensive, gets a little more important. And so that's just one little downside here of the 4Runner and its age. Also, since the last time I drove a 4Runner TRD Pro, they did improve a couple of other things. So you now have stronger flow form wheels here, and they have a new design to them. And to go along with those wheels, which are stronger, they've retuned the dampers. So we have the Fox internal bypass valve shocks, they're 2.5 inches, and so with those those. They've retuned them. They've also retuned the TRD spring, so the suspension is going to feel a tiny bit different, but it still has all the hallmark trademarks here of a 4Runner. So you still have pretty pronounced nosedive whenever you hit the brakes. You know, the suspension certainly moves around like you would expect from something that's this off-road capable. But you know, I'd say maybe the brake dive is a little bit improved. I don't think it's quite as dramatic as I remember it being a couple years back. I also think they improved the brake feel, because I remember the brake kind of having what other Toyota trucks often have, where they've oddly boosted brakes. These ones feel a little more natural and a little more progressive, so that it's not quite as much of an on-off switch as it used to be in past years. So I think that is definitely an improvement. Another improvement, which is standard now for 2022, is this surround view monitor. So you have a 360 camera, and it does have a dedicated, I think they call it a terrain view camera, so you have a forward-facing camera to see obstacles, which really helps whenever you're off-roading, to kind of, you know, see stuff that might be obscured by the hood or whatever. And so it's really nice that you now have that. I will say that the resolution is incredibly low. It is not a very high-res camera or anything, but still better than no view at all. And so I guess that is an improvement, but it is certainly an area where they could have a much better camera system than what they have currently in here. But, you know, at least they've added that. And so I think, you know, all those little improvements certainly do, you know, just add a little bit of a, you know, extra appeal to the 4Runner that it didn't have before. But I think, you know, the reason why the 4Runner continues to sell well is not even because of those little minor enhancements. It's really because of just the fact that this is a very enduring and endearing kind of idea and, you know, premise with this vehicle, of having something that's, you know, got Toyota reliability, which you don't get with any of the competitors. That's famous. I mean, these things will run forever, but yet you still have the off-road capability. You have, you know, some cool touches, like you have that sliding rear window that drops down, which is very dog friendly, and just another cool, unique touch that no one else matches in this segment, or in any segment, honestly. And you know, so you have some of those things, but I really think, you know, just the fact that you can buy one of these things, drive it forever, and not have a single worry in the world is a very strong thing. That's obviously been one of Toyota's pillars to its appeal over, you know, many decades now. But it's just something that bears repeating here, that, you know, that is one real key difference of this over, you know, some of those other competitors. And speaking of some of the competitors here, so, you know, over the past few years, the competitors have kind of changed a little bit. We still have the Wrangler on the market, which I guess is one of the closest competitors to this, although it doesn't drive as nice, but it is going to be a little more agile off-road than this is, of course. But they've also, I mean, Wranglers are expensive here for, you know, this new generation one. If you want a Rubicon, which has, you know, all of the same kind of off-road enhancements you get here with this TRD Pro and stuff, you know, those comparably equipped still with leather and all that are going to run you, you know, about $60,000. And you know, like for example, though, you can have like now a Bronco. Now I know it's very hard to get a Bronco at MSRP currently, at least, but you know, if you can hunt one down and have the luck of finding a Bronco at MSRP, or ordering one or whatever, in that case, you know, you can get one of the lower or mid-grade trims, which still can add on leather and, you know, be comparable to this, even with the Sasquatch package that those have, which give you bigger tires and even more off-road capability, while still having very nice driving dynamics, and you know, a little more closer to this than the Wrangler, I think. And so with that, you know, we can get one of those even with the Sasquatch package for about $50,000, very comparably equipped. And so, you know, I think that is now the strongest competitor. Obviously, it's irrelevant if you can't get a Bronco at MSRP, or get one at all for that matter, since they're you know, having production issues and all that. But, you know, if you're watching this video a little bit later on, or if you're able to find a Bronco for a good deal, I certainly think that it is a very compelling alternative to this. It has a newer engine, which gets much better fuel economy. Whether it'll be as reliable over 20 years of service, you know, that remains to be seen. I would put my money on the Toyota in that, you know, kind of a context. But, you know, it's just another thing, especially if you're not planning on keeping a vehicle for, you know, 1,000,000 miles. You know, the Bronco is also something worth considering. Also, if you want something that's a little less hardcore than this, but you still want tons of ground clearance, but you want something a little more modern, you know, I think that the Subaru Outback Wilderness that I recently drove is also another great competitor. It's only about $40,000, still has about the same power as this. It's going to feel a lot quicker than this, honestly. Still have great ground clearance. Obviously, off-road capability is not going to be quite as good as this. You don't have as many skid plates and all that kind of stuff. Tires are much smaller. It's certainly a downgrade in the off-roading department. But if you want just a lot of ground clearance and something that's still fairly rugged, I think that also could be a potential alternative as well. But But really, I think the biggest and strongest competitor still to the 4Runner is the Tacoma, which also continues to sell very well despite it being very ancient as well. And the thing is, you can get a Tacoma TRD Pro, same hardware you have in this, very similar looks, you just lose the hatch and instead have the truck thing. But those only cost about $50,000. So not a huge difference, but you're saving yourself $4,000. And you have the 6-speed automatic, a little bit of an improvement there. You know, you have a slightly more efficient engine with the 3.5 liter V6 in that, and still have the bulletproof reliability of the Toyota and the old school, you know, vibe with the Tacoma. I mean, it's, you know, very similar as far as how it drives compared to this. So, you know, that is just another one to consider, and I think that's why, you know, Tacoma, I think, actually still sells better than this, because, you know, I think it is still a slightly bit of a better deal, even if you are someone who really wants that Toyota, you know, ruggedness. I think that Tacoma, still, if you don't need the SUV thing, could be a really great option. But one last little thing I do want to add, which might be irrelevant depending on your needs, but I noticed, so I now have a daughter, and so putting her rear-facing car seat here in the back seat here, it's actually surprisingly spacious. It's definitely much more spacious in the back there than what you get with a Bronco or a Wrangler, and it's pretty similar, honestly, to even like the Subaru Outback Wilderness, and certainly will be better than a Tacoma as well. So if you want a more livable interior, actually using the back seat, I would say that this is definitely a nice step up over the Tacoma. And so if you use that back seat, that might be worth the $4,000 extra for that alone. One last thing to mention, though, is that with this TRD exhaust you get on the TRD Pro version, especially combined with the 5-speed, since, you know, it can't downshift quite as much, you do have a lot of drone, and it's not too bad depending on the circumstances. But, you know, it's just worth noting that there were a few times where I was like, man, this thing does kind of drone a little bit more than I would like. But that also, you know, goes with the slightly unpolished character of the 4Runner here anyway, so probably a moot point, but just one last little thing I wanted to mention there. But overall, you know, I still really enjoyed my time in the 4Runner TRD Pro here. You can definitely go watch my full review if you want to hear all the specs, hear about how it handles and all those types of things. But I just think that it certainly makes sense why this is appealing, especially considering how expensive Wranglers have gotten these days, and especially considering, you know, that there's still really not a good solid competitor to this outside of, again, the Tacoma, honestly, in a lot of ways. So, you know, I think that Toyota kind of has this market to itself in, you know, many aspects, and so I think that that also really helps to keep the sales strong. And I just have to also commend Toyota. Anytime, because it's rare in the car industry, but anytime a vehicle can continue to sell strongly even as it ages, you know, the company did something right from either a marketing standpoint or with, you know, as far as changes or whatever they did. You know, this clearly shows that, you know, they took the right approach with the 4Runner and continue to take the right approach with it. We'll see what a next generation brings here, which will be coming most likely in the next couple of years here. But until then, I still think these have a lot of appeal. They also don't depreciate very much either, so that also really helps with their appeal. And so I just think there's a lot to like here about this, as long as you can live with the rougher, around the edges kind of personality as far as the ride, the driving dynamics, you know, the interior. I mean, there's a lot here that feels like it's 10 years old, but, you know, if that doesn't bother you, I still think the 4Runner TRD Pro is still a great pick. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 4Runner. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Toyota for providing me here with a 4Runner to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you guys very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.